Hey, this is Dr. Barry. Let's talk for just a few minutes about KETO-CROTCH. Okay. I wasn't not going to make a video about this, but I had so many people reach out to me on social media who had seen the news articles. You may have seen this in some of the bigger women's magazines in the world. This basically came out of nowhere. And so now all of a sudden there's articles that appear virtually simultaneously in all of these women's magazines about keto-crotch and how eating the ketogenic way might lead to changes down there in odor or discharge or other things. And so I wanted to talk about this and let you know my experience with my patients at the clinic and what I think about KETO-CROTCH in general. So, for those of you who don't know me, I am a board certified family physician. I've been practicing for almost 20 years in my small clinic in Tennessee. I see men and women of all ages. And so I have taken care of women for decades with chronic recurrent yeast infections, chronic recurrent bladder infections, chronic cystitis, both infectious and just inflammatory and autoimmune. And so I was broadly trained in family medicine. I delivered a bunch of babies during my residency training. I've done a lot of office gynecology in my decades in the clinic. And so I feel like I'm kind of, and then plus I am a keto friendly doctor. So I feel like I'm uniquely qualified to speak about this. So let's talk about this. So what the whole premise of this is that if you cut too many carbohydrates out of your diet, you might get something called keto-CROTCH, which they describe as itching, discharge, and a change in odor. And so let's talk about that and see if this makes any sense or not. So really, there are three big things which can change a woman's discharge or odor, and they are a yeast infection, a bacterial infection of the vagina, or a yeast or bacterial infection in the bladder, or an infection or inflammation of the bladder. And then there are also some autoimmune conditions of the vagina as well that can lead to changes in discharge and odor. So the premise behind these articles is that if you eat not enough carbohydrates, somehow magically that'll make these things happen. But here's the problem. I've been treating just these kinds of conditions in the office for far over a decade. And what I've noticed is as more and more of my female patients convert to the ketogenic way of eating, women who used to have to come in 3 times a year for a yeast infection, they don't have to come in anymore. The yeast infections have gone away since they've cut the carbohydrates. Women who used to have chronic bladder infections multiple times a year don't have those infections anymore. And these yeast infections and bladder infections are very, very common in diabetic women, right? If you have type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes, if your blood sugar stays chronically high, you are much more likely to have a bladder infection, vaginitis, or vaginosis. You're much more likely to get all those. And so as my more and more of my female population in my practice has gone keto or at least low carb, all those things have gone away. Instead of having 6 yeast infections a year, they have 1 a year. Instead of having 12 bladder infections a year, they have 1 or 2 a year, if any. I've had women with chronic severe cystitis that's not infectious. It's just an autoimmune or inflammatory condition go completely away eating keto. Now, when you read these articles carefully, you'll notice that they say, well, there's really hasn't been any medical research about this, and really no doctors have stepped forward and talked about this. So I guess I'm the first doctor in the world to talk about KETO-CROTCH, evidently, and I guess that there's some honor in that or not. But my point is that these women who are getting chronic yeast infections, vaginal infections, vaginosis, bladder infections, bladder inflammation, they all get better when you cut the carbs. There's nothing about the ketogenic way of eating that's going to make you have vaginitis or vaginosis. It just makes no sense whatsoever. And so I went and I looked at a few of these magazines in the bookstore. And the funniest thing, there was a very funny pattern. Each magazine that had a big story about KETO-CROTCH also had a full page ad for Weight Watchers. And I found that very curious as well, that this just came out of nowhere just as Weight Watchers profits are hitting the tank. So rest assured, in my medical opinion, and in everybody else who is an MD, or an advanced practice nurse or a physician's assistant, we see less and less things that could give you changes in odor and discharge when you eat keto. You don't get more of that. You get much, much less than that. And if you also lose some weight in the progress, then congratulations. So I think KETO-CROTCH is just the latest myth that the big publishing houses who get a lot of their ad dollars from Weight Watchers and Biggest Loser and Jenny Craig, they would love for you to stop eating keto. And so if they can scare you with the latest scare tactic, which is KETO-CROTCH, then they're successful, and they're going to get more ad dollars from the big carbohydrate pushing weight loss programs. And so I don't think KETO-CROTCH is a thing. I've had exactly zero complaints from women who are eating keto about any of these symptoms. Not a single woman has come to the clinic and saying, since I started keto, I've got KETO-CROTCH. I haven't heard that a single time, and I don't expect I will. Now, women who eat way too many carbohydrates do have chronic yeast infections, chronic bladder infections, and also inflammation in these areas as well, even without infection. And so if you'd like to decrease your yeast infections and you'd like to decrease your bacterial infections and you'd like to decrease your inflammation, I would recommend that you absolutely explore the ketogenic way of eating, because that's going to help you do those things. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more like them, please consider subscribing to my channel. There's a little subscribe button, either there or there, and a little bell button right beside it. If you click those buttons, both of them, then every time I get a bright idea, you'll be one of the very first to know. So when we're talking about a month from now, keto armpits or keto monobrow or, keto butt rot, whatever they come up with next, then you'll be one of the very first to know that video just posted. And if my videos have had a little effect on your health and helped you live a better life, you can click on my Patreon link. It's right down there. You can sign up very quickly and throw a buck or two my way so that I have more time to make more videos just like this. This is Dr. Berry. I'll see you next time.